I'd like to share a very personal story with everybody. I think we got one slide here. This is a newspaper clipping, and as you probably guessed, that's me. This was back in 1999 in September. I actually made the news all across Canada. I was on TV very, very briefly, not for something I'm terribly happy about. There's a reason that I would like to share this with you because I believe it's very impactful, and there are 2 points in particular that everybody can take from this so that you don't have to learn it yourself. I've been working for Ellis Don since 2010, so about 14 years. Before that, I was a framer, residential carpenter, business owner, many other things. This particular day, we were working not far from here, just up on Country Hills Boulevard, in the north end of Calgary. We were framing a 3-story residential condominium complex, somewhere around 60 units, I believe. We were working on the 3rd floor, standing prefabricated walls. So we had to stand the walls around the elevator shafts. So my boss, in under 60 seconds, blitzed this scaffolding over the elevator shaft, and we stood the walls. We were all a little bit sketched out, so we made fun of us for not wanting to walk on it, and so we did. Now, we got the walls up safely, which was awesome, but later, somebody had to go back in and tile the walls together. That was me. I went back in, the scaffold broke. So to give you an idea of what that looked like, it was about 35 feet straight down, about 3.5 stories. For reference, if you go into any one of these stairwells and look down all the way, it's somewhere around that. So it's a fair ways down. Now, when the scaffold broke, I started kind of going down head first, which was a little bit of a problem because the pistons were already in for the elevator. Fortunately, the slab on grade wasn't for it. But if I would have kept going like that, I would have landed on my stomach on top of the pistons for the elevator. That probably would have ended fairly poorly. Fortunately, there was a plank across the 2nd floor, caught me in the head, got me going back feet first. I landed in the corner and then collapsed in between the wall and the pistons. I didn't hit any of that. It was like remarkably fortunate that I'm here at all today. As you can imagine, that's a lot of force traveling through somebody's body. Most of it ran through my right side. So my right femur didn't break, it literally exploded. I know it's a titanium rod in there. My right knee folded backwards, a bunch of other stuff happened. I don't want to gross people out. Now, the reason I'm telling this story is because there's 2 points in particular that I think are very important for everybody to understand. Here's the first one. So I'm lying there, I didn't lose consciousness. It was about the 3rd worst concussion I've ever had. I wanted to kind of get an idea of how bad things were. So, before I opened my eyes, I wiggled my fingers, I could feel them move. I'm like, okay, that's awesome. Wiggle my toes, feel that move. I'm like, okay, everything's gonna be fine, got this, no big. As I'm lying there, I open my eyes and look up, and people start poking their heads into the shaft from different elevations. I thought it was hilarious, actually, for some reason. But what was really weird was that my boss didn't come. He didn't come for a long time, and I didn't understand it at the time. Like, he was one of the last people to come. Later, I understood why. You see, he was also working on the 3rd floor. He was working just around the corner, a few units down. When they heard something, my coworker went up and jokingly said, I think a concrete guy just fell into wet cement because they were pouring the parquet that day. And then an electrician came up and said, that was your guy. So at this point, my boss was pretty sure that I was dead or in the process of dying, as you can imagine. Sit with that for a minute. Imagine what that would feel like if that was you. I don't think that's a situation any of us would ever want to be in. To make it a little bit more complicated, we were buddies. We hung out 2 to 3 times a week. Our wives were really close friends. We had 2 preteen kids that hung out with us. All of these people, we all knew each other. We were all friends. And now he's got to figure out how to go home and explain to his wife, who's always razzing about being a slave driver, explain to his wife that he had just killed people. And then he would have to explain to his children that directly because of his negligence, their buddy Mark was dead. And then he would have to call my wife, who is visiting friends in Ontario, and explain that he just killed her husband. Again, would you ever want to be in that situation? I wouldn't. Now, I keep using the term negligence. Why do I say that? Well, carpenters in the room are going to pucker a little bit. Let me explain the scaffold that he built. Again, super efficient, super fast. It was a piece of 2x6 on flat, spanning about 7 feet, and he put one down about every 2 feet. over a 35-foot drop. Yeah, exactly. Like, Mark, what were you thinking? And that must be your next question. Mark, why would you ever walk on that? It's so obvious that's unsafe. That was a horrible decision. You're absolutely right. You have every right to ask that question. I have an answer for you that's going to be interesting. We talk a lot about culture, the safety culture within Ellis Don, why it is so important. Let me give you a glimpse into the safety culture that we had. We had a running joke that was safety first, right after production, definitely after breaks, probably after lunch, and maybe just before wrapping up for the day. That's about where we put safety. We showed up to work in running shoes, shorts, maybe a shirt. No such thing as hard hats and safety vests, those are for wimps. I never even saw a harness or a lifeline. I didn't know what that was. I learned to drive a Zoom Boom by jumping in one day. On top of that, to make it even more complex, every time we'd stop for break, my boss would be regaling us with stories of bravado, just how much people risk and the production rates they got. And I also noticed that the only people he ever praised were people that were high producers or people who put their lives at risk. Being young, impressionable, green hand, I modified my behavior to fit into my environment. This is the power of culture. This is why safety culture is so important. I noticed what my boss thought was important, and me not wanting to aspire to mediocrity, I overachieved. It didn't end up well for me. So here's the second point that I think is really important for everybody in this room to understand. Each one of us contributes to the environment that we work in. Each one of us contributes to the culture that we work in. How so? Imagine you see somebody, whether it's in the office or on site, they take a few extra minutes to do the right thing for the right reason, the right way. Do we notice it and then not say anything? If we do, what are we telling that person? Aren't we telling that person that what you're doing is unimportant, we don't care about it? If so, is that person going to take that extra time the next time? Probably not. We're going for little tiny incremental gains over time. Whether we're a coordinator, an estimator, a scheduler, a super, a PM, management, anybody, we all have the opportunity to shift the culture of our company, and it's that culture that can help people be safe. It's a very important point. So in conclusion, now that you kind of understand a little bit about my backstory, the next time you're sitting with your scheduler, you're doing your schedule update, and they're asking you, what's coming up in the next 6 weeks for safety? Let's pre-plan our safety. What's coming up in the next 6 weeks for quality? What's coming up in the next 6 weeks for purchasing? I understand you're telling me that that's the way you're going to do it. Can we look at the plans together and make sure we got this dialed in? It's really easy to believe that the integrated phase planning process was created by some office guy that loves pencil whipping exercises. I would like everybody in this room to understand that that system is here because of this guy. This guy that now gets to spend about $10,000 a year in additional health care on top of what our plan covers just to try and stay functional. This guy doesn't want to see any more of those things. And the best way that I believe that I can help is by getting people in the habits of pre-planning their work so that everybody fully understands what they do before they're doing it. And if I can build those habits in people, that will shift the culture of the company to being more proactive and safer. Thank you for listening to my story.